Hello everyone, and in this video we'll be talking about the Crusades. And to keep this as short as possible, we are just going to move right along into this. But before, make sure you have the fill in the blank notes pulled up for this activity and turn these in when you finish for a grade. There isn't an exit ticket for this like there was for the Rise of Nation States fill in the blanks, but you will be responsible for having the notes, as the unit test for this will be open notes. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So the Crusades are what we also call the Holy Wars. We see here maybe a symbol of a cross. But what were the Crusades? The Crusades were a series of 4 wars between the Christians of Europe and the Muslims of the Middle East. So thinking back to those debates we had with Islam and the Battle of Tours and Charles Martel and stopping that spread of Islam, but also there was more to it. And so these wars were carried out by Christian political and religious leaders to take control of the Holy Land. So thinking about what the Holy Land is, if any of you guys know, you can think about it. We'll talk about it in the upcoming slides. So why did these holy wars occur? And this was because Islam was spreading closer to the Byzantine Empire, where we had held a lot of our Christian ideals. So Pope Urban II has his speech, which you guys will have an activity for. And this calls for all Christians to rise up and defend their brothers and sisters in the Byzantine Empire, and promises of salvation for those who fought. So the word salvation meaning promises entrance to heaven, sort of, that your soul will be saved by God. And Jerusalem was controlled by Muslims at this time, and so the Christians wanted Jerusalem. And this is Pope Urban II preaching towards the First Crusade. We'll talk about the effects of these crusades and the Muslim leader Saladin, who is, I believe he is also in your notes, or a vocabulary word. So the First Crusade, this is where the Christians take back the city of Jerusalem. And these crusaders created crusader states. So Christian crusaders, looking at the crosses on the front of their chest. And they ruled some territory using European feudalism. So remembering our idea of serfs, peasants, nobles, and lords. And the Christians win this first crusade. So this is another look at remembering our Orthodox Church and how that played a rise on the nation state of Russia. But we see in the colors the territories that were of Roman Catholic, Greek Orthodox, or Islam religious sects. And then leading into the Second Crusade, here we are with Saladin. Muslim armies are led by him, who was a brilliant leader and was a true test to Pope Urban II's speech, really tested him and challenged him, and recaptures the city of Jerusalem, leading for Muslims winning the Second War. And here in the second picture, we see some of the Crusaders trying to defend off the incoming Muslims from Jerusalem. But remembering that the Muslims controlled this territory first. And here we see the Second Crusade, the overland route and the sea route to get to Constantinople. We talk about the sack of Constantinople. I'm having a hard time saying it right now. Excuse me, guys. And then the Third Crusade, we see that Christian armies are led by Richard I of England. And remembering to our Rise of Nation States video, we talked about King Philip II and his brother, King Philip II, who was responsible for the Magna Carta, limiting the king's power. We go back to his brother, Richard I, who was known as Lionhearted. And this is for his courage as he led the Crusaders in the Third Crusade. And Richard and Saladin's armies were perfectly matched. They were both brilliant leaders. And the Third War ended in a stalemate, meaning neither side won. And Muslims would maintain control but allow Christians to live in and visit Jerusalem. So we see this idea of compromise or getting along for the sake of it. And here we see a picture representing the Third Crusade and Richard the Lion-Hearted's sea venture here in the blue and the land venture there in the red. The Fourth Crusade. And so we obviously in England, the Pope was not very happy with the end of the Third Crusade. And because he couldn't just deal with people getting along, he wanted more control of that territory. Obviously, as we see in multiple conquests throughout history with Germanic territories, Germanic tribes, and then our Spanish with the Aztecs and the Mayas. So here we see it once again. And so the Pope calls for another crusade, and crusaders end up sacking the city of Constantinople. And so the culture was a mix of Christian and Islamic backgrounds. And the knights' mission was to destroy all that was Muslim. And this weakened the city's defenses, which led to Byzantine's downfall. And the Fourth War did not even make it to the Middle East. It left a legacy of bitterness among Christians, Jews, and Muslims towards each other, so some religious strife. But it did stimulate trade throughout Mediterranean area and the Middle East, so thinking about all these people going and becoming a mix of cultures, especially during the Third Crusade that ended in a stalemate. We see that people were getting along for a period of time. And here we will see some of the Crusader states over here in this right-hand picture. But this shows all of the Crusades, 1 through 4, and their different paths. So other crusades, we have the Children's Crusade, which is pretty sad. The Pope believed that crusades weren't successful enough because those that fought had too many sins. They were not going to be saved in the eyes of God, I guess you could say. But children were the purest and would promise that God would protect them while fighting against the Muslims because they were pure and had not committed any sins. And most children did not return home. They were either killed, kidnapped, or sold into slavery. So thinking about sending your children off into a war is pretty brutal. And then the Spanish Crusade, so going back to the idea of the Reconquista and the Inquisition, remembering we talked about them with Ferdinand and Isabella in Spain. These were the rulers of Spain and were Catholic, and they essentially wanted to get rid of non-Christians, especially thinking about the intense religious strife that was going on between peoples right now. And so Jews and Moors were arrested and tortured, remembering back to those pictures we looked at in that video. And they were made to renounce their faith and accept Christianity. And many were also executed. So some key events of the Crusades, we have Pope Urban II's speech, calls to arms against Muslims, the capture of Jerusalem, Christian crusaders take the city from Muslims, the founding of the Crusader states, the loss of Jerusalem to Saladin in this Second Crusade, the sack of Constantinople by Crusaders in the Fourth Crusade. And then some effects of this were the influence of the Pope was weakened, because where was God's protection if there were crusades? And why were the Crusaders dying, especially like the children that didn't return home? The influence of nobles decreased, so the fewer of them came back from the Crusades because many of them were fighting. But again, thinking about how those that did return stimulated trade between Europe and the Middle East, because new items from the Middle East were in demand by Europeans now that they had gone to Jerusalem. And the religious strife, leaving hatred between Christians, Jews, and Muslims, and the overall weakening of the Byzantine Empire. So looking at Mongol armies, they invaded many areas such as Russia, China, and the Middle East. And they destroyed many cities and countrysides. We'll look at the Mongols a little bit more further along when we talk about Constantinople and the Ottomans. But they created a huge empire in most of Asia. I believe there is a picture in the next slide where we'll see, but we see some of them shooting archery here. And we might know of a country today such that takes the name of most of Asia that follows these people. If you're thinking Mongolia, you're right on the money. So yeah, again, thinking about this massive land of the Mongol Empire and how these people reacted to the holy wars, the Crusades that were going on around them. And then Constantinople, talking about the Ottoman Turks, taking down the defensive walls of Constantinople to claim it as their own. And the city became the capital of the Ottoman Empire, and today is Istanbul. And this empire was one of the longest lasting up until 1917, which was the end of World War I. So that is it for this video, guys. I hope you all are getting your fill in the blank notes turned in. As always, if you have any questions or concerns, please reach out to me. But if there is nothing else, have a great day and get your work in. Bye.